We are half the population. We earn, we save, and we endure. But do we invest? Money Matters for Her is an initiative by Mutual Fund Sahi Hai to celebrate women every day. We believe that one calendar day dedicated to women is not enough. So, throughout our sessions, we have invited pioneers of the financial world, the women who have broken glass ceilings and they've built their abode with their own hands. Money Matters for Her is a platform where women talk about finance and inspire women who still hesitate to invest because they are afraid of failing. For today's session of Money Matters for Her, we could not have invited a better guest than Radhika Gupta. She is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer at Edelweiss AMC and Vice Chairperson AMFI. She's a young women CEO, a global citizen, a writer, a storyteller, and of course, a speaker with an enviable sense of humor. She believes that there is magic in words, and she's a wizard. Radhika carries a trunk full of stories, and all her life lessons come with an interesting story attached. मुजफ्फरनगर के नानी के घर से Wharton Business School तक, Radhika has experienced it all. Radhika, I think I must stop here because I can go on and on singing your praises. But truly, what an inspiring life and what an inspiring personality. You're witty, you're smart, you're honest. And like I said, you inspire all of us here. Welcome to Money Matters for Her.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction. And I'm also part of the mutual fund industry. So that's
Yes.
the best part of my profile.
Absolutely. Radhika, you call yourself the girl with a broken neck, but you are so much more than that. You're a class topper, you're a Wharton School graduate, you're a diplomat's daughter, and you're a young woman CEO. From Pakistan to Nigeria, from New York to Delhi, I'm so curious to know about your journey. तो आपकी कहानी सुनते हैं आपकी ज़ुबानी?
So actually, I think सबकी कहानी बहुत ordinary होती है, and yet I think every story, every woman's story, I think is definitely extraordinary, and we often don't believe that. I am like, I think, many young, ambitious women who want to make the best, I think, of the opportunities that are provided to them. And I think that's been our philosophy through life. You know, when I grew up, my father is a diplomat. We moved across so many different countries. You mentioned Pakistan, and we grew up in Italy, etc. And, you know, my parents brought me up with the belief that life presents you so many opportunities and make the most of what is on offer. And that's really how I've grown up. So, you know, even if you're living in a difficult country like Nigeria, make it the best place to be in at that place in time. So that's essentially been my story. First 18 years abroad, then decided I was the first one in my family actually to go abroad for a college education, which is how I ended up at Wharton. And I really believe there should be no limit to the ambitions that, you know, a woman has in her head. And, you know, once you start believing it, then a lot of things वो possible भी हो जाती हैं.
True.
You know,
Yes.
सोचने लगो तो वो सब possible हो जाता है. And then, and I don't come from a finance background because my parents were in government. My mother is a teacher, now principal. Joined the finance industry on Wall Street, and then came back, did my own startup.
Yes.
And have done mutual funds. I mean, and the reason I'm telling this story is I also don't believe that, you know, to get to money, you need to come from a moneyed background, or you need to come from a background where you grew up hearing about money. I mean, we didn't grow up hearing about this as children. My parents were not in the corporate sector, but it's not so difficult to conquer. And you can make a career in finance despite not coming from that background if you want it enough.
Absolutely. And I think that is why, all of this is why it is so important for women like you to speak and to share your experiences. So, at the outset, I want to ask you if you could shed some light on how you broke barriers around gender stereotypes, or was it just always in your plan to establish a career in finance?
You know, it was not in my plan. You know, it's funny. I grew up in a career, you know, in a family where we heard forget finance. We didn't even hear about corporate India too much.
Right.
We heard more about IES, IFS, civil services, police services, because Papa ka wahi background tha.
Correct.
So that was public sector and this was private sector. So whether I was working for Pepsi or Coke or mutual fund, it was all private sector. So that's the growing up. But you know, the great thing is money is not so complicated. Finance is not so complicated. I discovered if you join the industry, if you're passionate about this and if you work reasonably hard enough, और आप सीख जाते हो, बाकी सब आपको life gradually सिखा देती है. And that is my story. You know, you learn, you join. I joined the industry in 2005. We went through 2005, 6, 7 were very good years for Wall Street. It was, of course, the great financial crisis, as many
Yes.
people know. So you learn from the good times, you also learn from the crisis time. गलतियां भी आप करते हो, गलतियां भी करना natural है in your career, in money as well. तो ये सब होता है and gradually, you know, every day you find yourself making more progress.
Fantastic. Radhika, you probably already know that market research has shown that women today are, even today, 2022, are hesitant to make investments primarily because of the fear of failing. Now, we all know your story. Most of us watching, you were once admitted to a ward because you had 7 rejections. You probably thought that was the end of it. But guess what? 24 hours into that, you were hired by McKinsey. Please take us all through the roller coaster of rejection, of hiring, of probably that disappointment, that deep disappointment, and everything that happened as a human and in between.
You know, I believe and I have spoken about things like rejection क्योंकि मुझे लगता है जो हमारा सिस्टम है वो हमें रिजेक्शन के लिए तैयार नहीं करता.
बिल्कुल.
वो सिस्टम कहता है that you work very hard बेटा, if you work very hard you'll get into a good college and you know then you'll get a good job. But what if you do all this and still you fail?
Yes.
And you will fail. You know, this is a reality. You could fail at a job interview, you could fail in a romantic relationship, you could fail in a marriage, you could fail with money. And all of us, and you know, we believe often that we are the only people who fail. I think mistakes are made by all of us and we are finally a product. हम अपनी गलतियों के भी product हैं, अपनी कामयाबियों के भी product हैं.
Correct.
Unfortunately, the system doesn't teach us to talk about that. And so I don't believe we should let fear of failure hold us back because it's better to try and fail than not to try at all. You know, my story of failing in terms of campus interviews is fairly public. A little few years after that, I actually started investing and had a terrible journey in my first 2 years of investing because I put all my money into the equity market and lost a lot of money at that point in time. But again, that doesn't dissuade you from investing itself. It just teaches you कि अच्छा मैंने कुछ किया, कोशिश की, चलो let me now learn from this and continue the journey.
You know, it's so, every time I listen to you and, you know, you talk about how your life is made up of happy experiences, sad experiences, good and bad experiences, it sort of redefines the definition of bravery in my mind. Because I think you are that definition. Because bravery is about taking brave decisions and, you know, being able to accept rejection. So thank you so much for that. Now, let's rewind a little bit to when you were 25. You moved to India with no business experience. You started Forefront Capital with, what, 25 lakh rupees. That would have been, I'm guessing at that point, it would have been scary. It would have been exhilarating, of course, and fantastic at the end of the day. What do you think today when you look back at that time?
Okay, so I think, you know, firstly, I think when you're young, you have a lot of energy and, you know, when you look back, you're like, wow, okay, I could do this when I'm young. That decision probably looked scarier at 39 than it did at 24. And perhaps it's also a subtle sort of lesson कि जब आप young होते हो तो आप risks ले सकते हो. You know, you have that jazba, you have that energy, you have it in you to take that risk. I think the second thing is, you know, when I look back on it, I don't, as I said, come from a business family, but and I hadn't lived in India because मैं ज़्यादातर बाहर बड़ी हुई थी.
Correct.
But you come back to India and you figure out, and the good thing I would say, मैंने बाहर भी काम किया, I've worked in India. Finance industry is actually a very easy industry to find your way through. Once you start getting into it, I think it's a very easy industry. So I got my SEBI license to start the company in 15-20 days. It was very, very easy. So if you put enough into it and you don't get too deterred by it, it's actually not that difficult. I think that was one learning. The other thing, which is less spoken about is that I could start the business because I had saved money. That decision to start at 24, 25 happens because you had savings, because there was a certain amount. It's a regulated business, right? And there's a certain amount the regulator expected the partners to invest in terms of capital to start the business. क्योंकि मैंने 3-4 साल कमाया था, सेव किया था, I was independent enough to be able to start a business without asking my father or father-in-law or anybody in my life.
Yes.
So I think money also enables dreams. I always say this, that my ability to come back to India and start something and make that leap only happened because I had the capital to back it up. And that's a beautiful thing that money does for you.
Absolutely, and there's a great lesson for all of us there. Radhika, I want to talk about your experiences in the financial world from a slightly different angle, which is at any point in time, did you feel like it was slightly more difficult for you being a woman? Because at the end of the day, finance is looked at as a man's territory. So tell us, how did you navigate through your life experiences, through your career as a woman, especially back then in foreign land?
So I'll tell you, I get this question nearly every day of my life in so many conversations that I do. Has it been difficult? And I don't want to deny that there are challenges. And, I consider myself very privileged. I think people probably have had more challenges than me. And I think the challenges are less woman-man. It is, of course, a little weirder. You're the only, I always say, the only sari in a suit, or, the only one who stands out. Subconsciously, there are challenges. There are challenges of being the odd one out. There are challenges around age also. When you're younger than most of your counterparts, these challenges exist. But I do believe that life is about seeing the opportunity in the challenge. And so if you had to ask me what would I do and do it again, I think there are so many opportunities that being a woman presents you. In the finance industry, you're different, you're unique, you bring a very different perspective to the table, and ultimately हमारे 50% consumer base और investor base women है.
True.
तो अगर आप उसे उस तरह से सोचो तो then you go forward. And I always believe, with due respect to the fact कि हम glass ceilings की बात करते हैं, biases की बात करते हैं, सबसे पहले जो glass ceiling होती है often हमारे दिमाग में होती है, हमारे सर में होती है, and that is the one that we need to work to shatter. I keep speaking about this in the last 3-4 months. I'm going through this period of pregnancy as we're doing this shoot. And 5-6 months ago, when this whole thing started, naturally it comes to your mind कि मेरे से काम हो पाएगा, मेरे से office हो जाए. Will all this happen? Because you hear all of this around you. And 6 months into it, I realized everything can happen. If you have confidence in your head, if you ask for a little bit of help, if you don't stress out so much, everything happens. So the work happens, the pregnancy happens, the Amphi Vice Chairperson happens, I've written a book, all of this happens, but you have to start by shattering some of those fears in your head.
So what I'm taking away from what you're saying is, बस नजरिया बदलना है. I like how in our conversation the word opportunity is coming all the time, because I think that is really the answer, right, to all of these mental blocks that we have. Now, if I can quote you, you said हिंदुस्तानी माँ ने individual customer experience अपने dining table पे सीखा है, right? That's what you said. When I heard this for the first time, it sort of hit me like a snowball. Please enlighten us.
हिंदुस्तानी माँ का जो स्किल सेट है, हिंदुस्तानी औरत का, it probably hasn't gotten its due. And in many, many different ways. आजकल हम empathetic leadership की बात करते हैं. हिंदुस्तानी माँ naturally caters to so many different kinds of customers. I mean, everybody knows that a mother manages, her mother-in-law and her husband and the needs of, her son and daughter. She manages the house, by the way, in a limited budget.
Yes.
and she usually saves some money on the side, which we all know. हमारी घर की हम उसे गुप्ता, उसमें गुप्त धन कहते हैं. So she manages that, and she does it without showing off and without cost budget meetings and without saying what a great cost manager I am. She caters. जब माँ घर में दाल बनाती है तो she doesn't go on the dining table and say कितनी दाल खाओगे. She says दाल कैसी थी, कितनी भी थकी हुई होगी, she will do that. I mean, I was joking a week ago that हम 10 मिनट की डिलीवरी की बात कर रहे थे. हिंदुस्तानी माँ तो चाहे घर में कम हो, she'll say हाँ 10 मिनट में मैं कुछ बना दूंगी. So हिंदुस्तानी औरत has a lot of skill sets. And on a more serious note, if you look at even the COVID period we went through, lot of the countries that were led exceptionally by COVID were run by women. So you can lead the country as a finance minister, you can lead countries through pandemic, and you can lead your families. So skill sets सारे हैं.
Skill sets सारे हैं, and it's beautiful how you've made it very clear that Hindustani Ma is the poster girl of women, even in the financial world. राधिका, आपकी जिंदगी से एक कहानी चुरा के लाई हूँ. जब आपके घर के कबर्ड से 2 लाख रुपए चोरी हो गए थे और आपके घर में द फनी पार्ट वाज किसी को पता भी नहीं था कि माँ ने जो है अपनी सेविंग्स कर करके उन 2 लाख रुपए को जोड़े हैं, which in fact you spoke about shortly. There are millions of such cupboards in this country with hidden wealth in India. What would you say to such mothers who still tuck away their cash,
I would say 2 things. पहली बात तो आपने जोड़ा है वो बहुत अच्छी बात है, और वो I don't want to take away from that. आपने जोड़ा है, आपने सेविंग की आदत डाली है, वो निवेश के लिए, इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिए पहला स्टेप है. बट द सेकंड थिंग आई वुड से, इट इज नाउ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू मूव आउट ऑफ द कबर्ड. आपने इतनी मेहनत से पैसा जोड़ा, यू वर्क सो हार्ड टू पुट दैट मनी इन द कबर्ड. Now work equally hard to make sure that money works hard for you.
True.
So you did step 1. Now I think it is important to do step 2. And step 2 is not as difficult if you've done step 1. So I think the message is you've saved. Now go out and make that money. Work hard, just as hard as you have. आपने कितने compromises किए होंगी. मेरी नानी कहती थी कि मैं बस स्टॉप से, वो प्रिंसिपल थी, घर से बस नहीं लेती थी और रिक्शा नहीं लेती थी, बस स्टॉप से चल के जाती थी इतने पैसे बचाने के लिए. हर घर में कोई ऐसी, कोई हर घर में कहानी.
बिल्कुल.
इतनी मेहनत की आपने छोटे अभी थोड़ा सा सीखिए, खुद को एम्पावर कीजिए. निवेश इतना कॉम्प्लिकेटेड नहीं है, बहुत सारी, I mean, now there are tools like mutual funds. Now make the next step.
So I think when money is in the cupboard, it is every Hindustani औरत का best friend, दोस्त है. But once it comes out of the cupboard and you make it work, it can actually be an enabler. That's my takeaway. Radhika, let's come to a very pertinent question. How do you think India's economy would change if we increase women's participation in it?
So, the sad thing is, and the numbers tell you, India की जो women participation in the economy, I think it's about 27%. It is unfortunately coming down. There are enough reports, और मैं ज़्यादा statistics नहीं quote करूँगी, but if you just took up women's participation by 20-odd%, the impact on GDP is incredible. और ये मैं आपको साधारण तरीके से समझाती हूँ. अगर एक माँ या एक लड़की डिसीजंस लेना शुरू कर दे, वो खुद के लिए सिर्फ डिसीजंस नहीं लेती, वो अपने परिवार के लिए लेती है, शायद अपने बेटी के नाते फैमिली के लिए लेती है, शायद अपने बच्चों के लिए लेती है. अगर आप एक, जैसे मेरी मदर इन लॉ मैंगलोर की हैं, विच इज़ इन कर्नाटका. वहाँ की काफ़ी लड़कियाँ, यंग लड़कियाँ बॉम्बे आती हैं कमाने. अब हमारे घर में एक लड़की थी जो आई थी मैंगलोर से बॉम्बे. जब वो आई, जब उसने यहाँ कमाना शुरू किया, when she got financially independent, what she was able to do was influence 3-4 of her sisters.
Correct.
To move to Bombay. She became an ecosystem for them. उसने आके यहाँ घर खरीद लिया, 4th standard पास थी. Then she influenced many people in that locality. तो जब आप एक women को empower करते हैं, जब एक women participate करती है, तो उसका impact बहुत ज़्यादा होता है, और यही impact भर भर के उभर के economy पे आता है.
Absolutely, women are the earliest and the most active influencers, और ये आपने बिल्कुल सही बात की है. Now, let's talk about the orbit shift in India also, which is taking place. while this is happening, on the other side, women have started taking charge, like you rightly said. But still, so many households don't fully realize, the importance of women potential. I want you to give us maybe a message in your own words to everybody listening to you. But लेकिन आपकी कहानीकार स्टाइल में बता दीजिए.
So I think the message is twofold. एक तो आज के ज़माने में लड़की का potential, I mean, I don't even think we need to have I started a hashtag about when the Olympics were happening called Bharat Ki Beti, hashtag Bharat Ki Beti.
Yes.
Because women are doing everything. I get letters from women via social media every week. और आप चाहे सहारनपुर पकड़ लीजिए, चाहे मणिपुर पकड़ लीजिए, young women are getting more ambitious.
Yes.
I think it is for households to channelize that ambition. आप कहानी की जिक्र कर रही थी, मैंने जब गर्ल विद अ ब्रोकन नेक किया तो मुझे एक लड़की का मैसेज आया and she found my assistant and she came to my office and randomly met me. और she said मैं बनारस छोड़ के आई हूँ. मैंने कहा अच्छा. She said मेरी फैमिली में किसी ने ज़्यादा काम नहीं किया है, लेकिन मैं अब CFA कर रही हूँ, फाइनेंस इंडस्ट्री में अपना करियर बनाना चाहती हूँ. मैंने आपका वीडियो देखा, मैंने अपने पेरेंट्स को कन्विंस किया कि मैं आके कुछ बनाऊंगी और मेरा नाम है द गर्ल फ्रॉम वाराणसी. ऐसी बहुत सी, दिस इज वन स्टोरी आई एम टेलिंग यू. सो आई थिंक वन द मैसेज टू हाउसहोल्ड्स इज दैट द लिमिट ऑन वुमेन्स एम्बिशन, when you give her a little bit of support, the fact that my parents give me thoda sa support na to go abroad, then you take that and you can really fly. I think the other message to households is कि women को household decision making में और financial decision making में एक equal participant बनाइए. I hope some men are also listening to this conversation. एंड जो परिवार होता है, जो हाउस होल्ड होता है, उसमें गोल्स होते हैं. आप निवेश क्यों करते हैं? आप निवेश किसी कॉन्टेस्ट के लिए तो करते नहीं है कि मेरा निवेश आपसे अच्छा है. रेस, राइट? इट इज अबाउट मनी, इज अबाउट इनेबलिंग ड्रीम्स. चाहे वो बिजनेस शुरू करना है, बच्चों को बेटर लाइफ देनी है, वो साथ साथ होता है. तो जब हम शादी भी करते हैं, we are equal partners. And I would encourage households and especially men to bring women into that conversation. I would encourage women to ask. और आजकल इतने प्लेटफॉर्म्स हो गए हैं, सीखना चाहो तो मनी के बारे में सीखना बहुत आसान हो गया है. This was not true 20 years ago. मैं आपको बताऊं 20 साल पहले, and my mother is highly educated. She went to St. Stephen's, runs a school. She's not involved in financial matters. अब 2-3 साल से जब से मैं म्यूचुअल फंड की CEO बनी हूँ, रात को हर बार फ़ोन करती हैं, अच्छा मुझे एक फाइनेंस के बारे में एक कॉन्सेप्ट सिखा. सो समटाइम्स शी लर्न अबाउट डिविडेंड, समटाइम्स शी लर्न अबाउट इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड क्या होता है, समटाइम्स शी लर्न अबाउट बॉन्ड्स. शी आस्क एंड look, she's in her mid-50s. And it's so inspiring to see that. And I encourage all women to start asking those questions.
Yes, so the message is very clear. Start asking questions. There's no age for learning. And where money matters is concerned, there certainly isn't not. अब मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाहूँगी कि आप वो क्या बदलाव है जो हर घर में देखना चाहती है with respect to women and women's participation in money?
आई थिंक आज भी हमारे घरों में जो पैसे की बात होती है, मैं बनिया कम्युनिटी से आती हूँ, वो खुल के नहीं होती है. डाइनिंग टेबल्स पे नहीं होती है. जितनी हम बात करते हैं पढ़ाई की, फॉर इंस्टेंस, कि अच्छा यहाँ जाना है, मार्क्स इतने आने चाहिए, वो तो बहुत खुल के बात होती है. पैसे की बात होती नहीं है, खुल के बात नहीं होती, शुरुआत से बात नहीं होती. तो आई थिंक अगर डाइनिंग टेबल पे कभी माँ बाप बैठ के, और बच्चे भी सुन लें, बच्चे भी ये आदत दे कैन पिक अप. I think agar if we have open conversations about money in our homes which involve the family, that would be very good, not only for women, even for children. So I think more open conversation, even more open conversations about problems we have with money, that will encourage us to save, and conversations about what our goals are, how we should think about investing. Money is ultimately complicated in the sense that it is emotional. Money के साथ बहुत सारे इमोशंस जुड़े होते हैं, गोल्स जुड़े होते हैं, तो उसको खुल के बात करनी चाहिए. That's one change I would love to see.
Yes, I think a conversation is really the answer to this. I remember the first time I started to think about money is when I was a teenager and someone asked me a question, what's your conversation about money, which I couldn't comprehend back then, but that's really the key. Radhika, let's come to a rapid fire.
Okay.
Rapidly.
Okay,
Aapke
rapid.
style
Have to be
mein.
rapid.
This is
Okay.
yes, this is bilkul aapki style mein. Okay? Here we go. Are you ready?
All right.
Okay. Food, fashion, finance, films in order of your preference.
Oh my God, that's a lot of stuff. Okay, so finance is my profession. It's given me everything. So I have to say finance first. Then films, then food, then fashion.
Okay, give us an investment mantra in 10 words.
Do what works for you, not anyone else.
Fantastic. What's been your favorite book, a book that, you keep going back to again and again?
Okay, so I'm saying this to demystify myth. I don't read that many money books. And people keep, and this is not a rapid answer, but people expect a finance professional to read money books all the time. I read literature books. That's just me. And I'm writing or I've authored a book now. So you don't need to sit in front of a Bloomberg terminal and read valuation books all day, even if you're a finance professional. And even though there are finance books out there, and you can do that, I'm saying this for a reason.
I think that's a relief for everybody. Tell me, is there a right time to start investing in mutual funds?
As early as possible.
Okay.
One, I would say as early as possible, but while as early as possible, after getting some knowledge. So early as possible so that you start your wealth creation journey early, लेकिन सीख के ऐसे ही नहीं.
सीखना जरूर है.
सीखना
Absolutely.
जरूरी है.
Learning
Blindly
is the
नहीं
key.
करना, हाँ.
Learning is the
हाँ,
key.
blindly मत करो.
Blindly मत करो. ठीक है. What's your favorite mutual fund feature and why?
SIP. Because it is simple, it inculcates a savings habit and the outcome is very good. So SIP, for sure.
Okay, share with all of us a dream that you could make true surely because of disciplined investment.
Oh, so many. But starting my business without having capital from the family.
Right.
And now we just bought a house in Mumbai.
Wow.
Fairly young. So
Congratulations. That's fantastic. What would you say to all the women that are listening to you right now, but especially the ones who are afraid of investing?
Your potential and ability is limited in your own mind. It is genuinely limitless. So start and don't be afraid to fail. In fact, start early, because if you fail early, you'll learn quickly, and by the time you have lots of money, it'll be easier and you'll make less mistakes.
Radhika, leave us with एक कहानी, एक छोटी सी 1 minute की कहानी. I think, I remember you saying that almost all stories have a happy ending. तो ऐसी एक कहानी बता दो.
So I've thought of one. I've been taking, because of pregnancy, I have a nurse coming with the injections. तो बहुत time तक आती रही, and I guess she comes to the house, so she got to know me. तो एक दिन मेरे से पूछती है, मैम आप म्यूचुअल फंड में काम करती हैं? मैंने कहा हाँ. She's like, मुझे SIP शुरू करनी है.
Okay.
मैंने कहा क्यों? She said, मेरी बेटी है and I want her to study and get educated. और मुझे ज़्यादा पता नहीं था, but when I come, you're on the phone, मैं कुछ सुनती हूँ finance के बारे में, and I think अब मुझे कुछ करना चाहिए. So the fact that she just picked this up and thought she should do it, and do it to give her daughter a better future, I was very motivated by that. I think Indian women are changing.
And this kahani perfectly explains opportunity, right? She heard the opportunity, she found it, and then she spoke about it. Yeah. Radhika, thank you so much. It's been an immense pleasure, honestly, talking to you, listening to how beautifully you explain concepts, and your stories were almost like meeting a long-lost friend and, revisiting all of these experiences. Thank you so much. And, after listening to you, I can definitely feel sort of a shift in my head about my ongoing conversation about money. And I certainly hope that it reaches our audiences in the very same way. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would also like to thank our audience at this moment. Thank you so much for staying with us through the sessions and for showering so much love. I hope today was as beautiful an experience for you as it was for me. I would hope to see you again in another session where we will come together, we'll celebrate women, we'll talk about finance, and we will try to bridge the gender gap. Thank you and see you soon.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.